Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I will be introducing you to JavaScript variables. What are variables in JavaScript? JavaScript variables are containers for storing data values. In order to create a variable, you need to use the var keyword, which is spelled VAR. It has to be in lowercase. Also, when you create variables, creating variable means declaring variables. It's the same thing. When you declare variables, you have to assign a value to variables, and you use the equal sign to assign values to a variable. For example, if I wanted to create a variable X, I'm going to give it a value of 7. Also, if I want to create a variable called, say, my car, and I give it a value of Porsche. When you are creating variables, it's always good practice to name your variables closely to what they are going to store, the type of data they're going to store. For example, here I've named this variable my car, which is an indication that the type of data I'm storing is relating to cars. Notice the two difference in the two values here. This one here, the value is 7, which is a number. And notice here, the value here is a Porsche, and I've put quote around it. When you are declaring variables, if you are declaring a text, you have to enclose it in quotes. You either have to use single quotes or double quotes, but you can't mix them. You can't use a single quote here and then a double quote here. That's the only way the computer will understand that it is dealing with a text. You need to enclose the values in quotes. You don't need to do that with numbers because the computer knows that that is a number. But if you want the computer to know that is a string, they call it a string in programming. If you want to know that this is a string, you need to enclose it in quotes. Also notice I've used semicolons here, which is important. That indicates that that is the end of that statement. A JavaScript program is basically a collection of statements. This indicates this is one statement. This indicates this is another statement because of the semicolon. So you have to do that when you're declaring variables. You can also declare variables without assigning them a value. So when you declare a variable without a value, it is known as undefined. Once you have defined or declared a variable, you can change its value. For example, here I've already defined a variable called my car. If I wanted to change the value from Porsche, for example, to a Range Rover, all I need to do is call the variable by name and assign it a different value. So that way I've already changed the value. Once you've declared the variable, you can change the value. A variable that is declared without a value is known as undefined. Also, it's very important to know that JavaScript is case sensitive. So for example, here I've declared this variable my car with uppercase C. If I try to reference it with a lowercase c, it will not work. You can experiment with JavaScript inside your web browser console. If you are using a Mac, you can access your web browser console by clicking on Option, Command, and J once you've got the web browser open. If you are on a Windows-based computer, once you've got the web browser open, you can just press F12. That will give you the web console. I have got the Google homepage open, so I'm going to access the web console just by hitting the F12 on the keyboard, and that will give me the console. So this is the developer console where you can experiment with JavaScript. So there are different ways you can dock it. So if you click here, at the moment it's docked to the side. You can also dock it to the bottom, and that will give you the page, the web page you're currently viewing. and then you can experiment with the code on the side, or you can do it on this side, dock it to the left. So depending on whatever you fancy, you can dock it wherever you like. I'm going to just dock it underneath for now. So let's try and experiment with some JavaScript. So I'm going to declare a variable. Inside the console here, I'll just type in var to declare variable, and I'll give the variable a name of x, give it a value of 7. So now if I want to call this variable, all I need to do is call the variable by its name. If I press X, it will return the value of 7. Now that I've declared the variable, I can also change its value. All I need to do is call it by its name, use the equals to, and assign it a different value. Now if I call the variable X again, it no longer stores 7, but it now stores 8. Same thing if I declare another variable called, let's declare a new variable. I'm going to call this variable my car. Okay. My car. Okay, now I'll give it my car, and I'm going to give it a value of, say, Porsche. Okay, and I need a semicolon to end that. So now if I call this variable by its name, if I say, for example, if I call it by car, it will not work. You know why? Because I've referenced it in lowercase. You know, the C I use is in uppercase. So it's very important that you reference your variables the way you've defined them. If I now go back and call it again with uppercase C, it should return the right. You can see it's giving me the value of Porsche. And once you've declared a variable, you can easily change its name, change its value. So if I want to change that to something else, I'll just call it by name. So I want to change this to a Ford, for example. All right, and do a semicolon. Now that's changed it. If I call the variable again by name, it will no longer store Range Rover, it will be now storing Ford. So these are some of the basic examples you can use to play around in the browser console. The console is very useful for playing around with little values like this, so you can experiment and get acquainted. So that's it for this video on JavaScript variables. Many thanks and bye for now.